Hello, wonderful people. This is Tom Check with Choice Coaching, helping you unlock your inner awesome. And today we're talking about interpersonal relationships, relationships with other people, not just with ourselves. And this is something that many of us, and possibly you, struggle with. Feeling like you've got meaningful interpersonal relationships. Feeling like you actually care about and are cared about by this other person. And it could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be all sorts of people. We've all got lots of different interpersonal relationships in our lives. And we're selling ourselves short if we go through life with kind of crappy relationships. If we're not getting to be our true self, right? If we're always having to put on a mask like we talked about in another video, then life isn't as full. It's not as joyful as it could be. And you deserve to have a joyful life. You deserve to feel like you are truly connected to other humans because we are social creatures. Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you are a social creature. And you might have built a story about why you don't reach out. I'm just an introvert. I'm just this type of person. And almost always when we dig under those stories, they are there because we had a negative interaction at some point in our lives where somebody made us feel like we weren't good enough, or where we decided that others weren't good enough, or where it felt dangerous or it felt not safe, or we got hurt. Somebody rejected us. And we decided way down in our subconscious that we weren't going to do that anymore. And then we wonder why we struggle with depression, why we struggle with anxiety, why we struggle to feel like a whole human. And it's because we're not being authentically connected to other humans. And there's one way that this kind of shows up that I think is kind of funny, but leads into a deeper conversation. And it's something that I've done many times. It's something I'm sure you've done. Everybody, I think, has done this. And it's the chicken and the egg paradox, right? Like, I'm not going to call my buddy Chris until he demonstrates that he likes me enough to call me first. Totally makes sense, right? If they're not going to demonstrate love, I'm not going to demonstrate love. I'm not going to put myself out there if they're not willing to put themselves out there. And then we spend a whole lot of time not talking to our friend Chris, not talking to the people we care about, to the people you care about, because we're waiting for them to call to demonstrate love, even though we're not willing to demonstrate love first. And I'm using the word love there. That might be a bit woo-woo of a word for you. Care, interest, whatever you want to call it. You're not demonstrating it when you don't call. And at a deeper level, even after we do get on the phone, how often are you just having a surface level conversation? You're talking about sports or weather or politics or what they bought at the store, what movie they've seen. You're talking about stuff that really doesn't matter. And you're doing it so that you don't have to talk about you, because you're waiting for them to talk about themselves first, demonstrate that vulnerability before you're willing to do so. And just like when we don't call, when we don't get vulnerable first, the relationship suffers. We end up having these really surface level relationships. And you deserve to have rich, meaningful, really loving relationships, really caring relationships, really interesting relationships. And the only way you can do that is when you and the other person are able to be your true selves. When you're not wearing a mask, right? When you're not putting on a show, but when you're talking about the stuff that really matters to you. And the way to open that door is to do it yourself, is to be a little vulnerable. And one easy kind of way to do that I think is a great little experiment, is to call the person you've been meaning to call, but they haven't called you, so you weren't going to do it. And then to be vulnerable with them, maybe what would be considered a lightweight way. And just to say, I've thought about calling you a lot, and I haven't. And there was some story inside of me that said that if you didn't call me first, I wasn't going to call you. And most often, the response you get is, oh my gosh, me too. It's so weird. I do that all the time. And all of a sudden, you're having a real conversation. And maybe it backfires. Maybe the other person isn't ready for it. Maybe they go, well, you're weird. But probably not. Very rarely does that happen. And when it does, maybe it's an indicator that this relationship has gone so long without authenticity that it might not be a relationship anymore. And you might have to start from scratch and get to know the person just like they're a brand new friend, which can be kind of odd. But here's the real joy here. When you get vulnerable, you get to know yourself better. We as humans, one of the ways we learn about ourselves is by verbally processing. And we do that in conversation. And conversations happen with other people. So if you get into conversations where you are being authentic with other people, regardless of how they react, you will learn more about you. That's a really amazing gift. And then you also get to give this person that you care about a gift. And that gift is opening the door and showing them that it's okay for them to be vulnerable too. When you model this for others, most of the time they step into it as well. Maybe not immediately, maybe not on the timeline that you'd like. Maybe it takes them a couple days, couple weeks, couple years to really get it through their head that they can be real too, that they can be authentic with you. And that's okay. You're giving them a door and you're showing them that it opens and you're inviting them to walk through it. And you're doing that as you explore yourself and as you open your own door and as you create this really awesome effect for yourself. What's the payoff of doing this? Because it's scary. It's gonna take some trial and error. The payoff is that you feel more joyful. You feel more fulfilled. You feel more connected. You feel less alone and less lonely. Even if they don't step into that vulnerability with you, even if it's just one-sided, your level of joy will go up. And some of your relationships will change, probably for the better. And some of them might go away if they're not the right relationships. And that's okay, because that makes enough space for the relationships that are right, that allow you to be who you are without putting on your masks, that allow you to be authentic and vulnerable. And that's a life you deserve, full of joy, fulfillment, connection. You deserve that. So the invitation today is to identify one person who's safe. One person who, when you get a little vulnerable, you can be reasonably sure that they're not going to freak out. This is probably a good friend, maybe a family member. And start small. Start with, hey, I noticed that I've been wanting to call you and I haven't because you didn't call me, and I realized that I was stuck in this loop. Do you ever feel that way? See what happens. Let me know. I'd love to hear. Start small. Work up. Get more connected. Life is better when you're more connected. And you're better when you're more authentic and vulnerable. So that's what I've got for you today. I wish you the very best and let me know how it goes.